All right, by popular demand, here is my Spanish rice recipe. So I've got about a tablespoon of oil, use vegetable oil, heat it up in a medium high heat in the saucepan. So make sure it's hot enough. Just throw a piece of rice in there and see it moving around. Okay, so I put 1.5 cups of rice, put it in there. Be a good serving for about 8 to 10 people. And then make sure all the rice gets some oil. So I don't like to put too much oil because then the final product is a little bit greasy, so I try to avoid that. So that's all the oil that I put. Okay, so as this is browning, I make a little room in the middle so I can saute my onions and my garlic. Okay, so my onions and my garlic right here. I use the old slap chop to make the onions really fine. My boys don't like onions, so you can't really tell they're there. And that's about 2 garlic cloves. And they were pretty big. They're like grape size. So, and then these are the other ingredients. So I just prepped cumin, Knorr's, chicken bouillon, and tomato sauce. One thing I forgot was the butter. The reason why I use butter is because I don't want to add more oil, so I saute the onions and the garlic with butter. Gives a little more flavor. So in that little middle area, make sure the butter gets nice and hot. And then I take my cutting board and just put those onions right there in the middle. Okay, and those will saute for a little bit. Okay, now, the rice is still browning, so you don't want to take too long. You don't want the rice to get burnt, but you want to give it enough time for the onions to get nice and a little bit caramelized. So let it sit a little bit, not too long. You know, 15-20 seconds. It's always the best to use fresh ingredients, so that was a fresh onion. You can already smell it. It smells great. Alright, so move those around. It's already starting to caramelize a little bit. Alright, now before the onion starts to burn on the bottom, before the rice gets too well done, so I'm going to start marrying those flavors into the rice. So now the onions and the rice gets mixed in, rice is still browning. Got maybe a little bit of a buttery hint in there. Okay. Alright. So once those onions are mixed in, I'm going to make another little space in the middle. So now I'm going to I'm going to put my garlic in there. Saute, that's what I was looking for. So I'm going to saute my garlic in a little bit of butter, not too much, so it still does add a little bit of a oiliness to it. Alright, so here's my 2 garlic cloves. I'm going to put those right over the butter. They get nice and brown and a little bit crispy, actually. Now these cook a lot more quickly than the onions, so you have to watch these, make sure they don't burn. See, it's already starting to get brown. The butter was nice and hot really quick. Okay, notice the rice is still browning. Adds a lot to the smell. Smells great. Okay. Alright, so you see before that starts to burn, so now I want to mix the garlic in with the rice. And see how that rice on the bottom has already started to brown? Now you want it to brown a little bit more on the other layers. And that's why you don't want the fire too hot, or else by the time you do all these steps, the rice is going to be a little bit black. So nice roasty. Make sure it gets mixed in there. Every grain of rice gets the flavor of the onions and the garlic. All right. So let that sit for a while. My next ingredient is going to be the tomato sauce. Okay, it's just a 49-cent can of tomato sauce. Now, since I only used a cup and a half, sometimes I don't want it to be too tomatoey, so I'll put maybe 2/3 of the tomato sauce, maybe 3/4 of it. Just add some wet texture to it, so sometimes I don't like it too wet. Alright, put it in. Taste this cooking. Alright, so since I used 1.5 cups of rice, I'm gonna add 3 cups of water. So alright. So make sure this mixes in. Yeah, it's a 2-to-1 ratio of water to rice always. That always gets the perfect rice. 2 parts water to 1 part rice. That's math. Alright, so that's about it as far as the technical part of it. The flavoring part now is the nors and the cumin, and I just flavor it to taste. Alright, so for the nors, I usually put maybe 2 tablespoons in. And that gives it just the right flavor of chicken, and adds a saltiness to it. You don't want it too salty. I think 1 more would have been way too salty, so this is just the right amount for us. Okay, mix it in good. And we got the cumin, and I like to put about a teaspoon, maybe half a teaspoon. I think that might have been, and then you can smell that. All right, make sure that's mixed well, because once it starts to steam, You don't want clumps that have all the red sauce, and some clumps have none. So I would normally taste this. I already know it's the right amounts. All right, so you wait for this to start boiling. Once it starts boiling, just lower it, put it on a simmer, and set your timer for 20 minutes. All right, 20 minutes are up, so I'm gonna check the rice. Nice and fluffy. So you can just check it on the bottom. See that? Sometimes you get a little bit crispy. If it's a little soupy, then just put it on for another 5 minutes. Let it get to the consistency you want. But that's about it. Good luck.